Thanks for listening to Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast, keeping you up to date with the latest in American soccer. And don't forget to subscribe.
Hey listeners, it's your boy Arman Kafai. Steven's still in Cuba. Jake Watroba on the show. Jake, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm really excited for this week's episode.
Yeah, I am too. I mean, again, this is part 4 of our mini-series talking about hashtag Save the Crew and MLS potentially relocating the Columbus Crew to Austin. Actually, it's such an interesting situation, Jake. I mean, we just saw a logo come out for Austin FC, and to discuss that, amongst other things, we have Morgan Hughes, Save the Crew, Andrew Erickson from the Columbus Dispatch, and Josh Babetski from MLS in Austin to all give them their different viewpoints. But Jake, I want to talk about that logo. What'd you make of it? Because we saw the Inter Miami logo come out, and we were both drooling over this one, but this one seems a little bit, I guess, underwhelming.
For as awesome as the Miami International Football Club Day, Miami, whatever it's called, for as awesome as that logo was, the Austin FC logo was equally as kind of just meh. In my opinion, there are 10 logos in MLS that are worse than it, but there are also 10 logos in MLS that are better than it. It's fine on its own. It's whatever. It's not all that great though. I mean, it's a solid logo. Like I said, there are certainly worse ones in the league than it. But what are your takes on that?
Well, Jake, I feel like it's a logo that it looks meh right now, but I do feel like in the coming weeks and months, if MLS ends up going to Austin, that it'll grow on me. I'm trying to think of a logo to relate it to in MLS that grew on me, because I mean, I feel like I don't know. I can't think of any off the top of my head. I mean, I think it's a really nice logo, but I mean, at the same time, you're losing the one of the Columbus Crew, which I think is black and yellow is a beautiful color scheme to go with. I think it's just crazy to me, Jake, that we're hearing MLS, Austin stuff coming out, like logos and stuff like that, when we don't even know if the team is officially relocated yet. I find that very fascinating, and again, it's one of the topics that we're going to hit on, especially with Morgan. But overall, Jake, I mean, what do you make of getting a logo and getting all that stuff before the team's officially relocated?
It's definitely interesting timing, to say the least. I think and we try to remain, I guess, neutral as best we can here on this show in regards to this issue. But to me, I think it's a little, I don't know if disingenuous is the right word to use, or but out of place. But to me, it kind of seems as like a big middle finger to Save the Crew fans to release this logo before you've even announced that they are going to relocate that team. Now, obviously, there's lawsuits and litigations, and we'll talk about that with Andrew Erickson as it regards to the Modell law and all those things going on in the state of Ohio that potentially could keep the Crew in Columbus, for 2019 and beyond. But to me, when you're talking about relocating a team, taking these fans, the city of Ohio's team away from them, but you haven't announced it yet, and you're going to go out and release a new logo and a new name and a new color scheme. To me, that just kind of seems like a kick in the crotch. I don't know if you feel the same way about that.
No, I do. I genuinely do. I feel like, look, if MLS is going to go to Austin, MLS is going to go to Austin. Nothing's going to stop them unless something, pops up and a Columbus owner says, or a Columbus person says, hey, I want to invest a lot of money into this team to keep them here. But to release it when a team's is not officially relocated, it's wrong. I feel like it's very wrong, and I don't agree with it. But it happened, so it's not something I can go back and say, wish it didn't happen. It happened. We got this logos, we got all that stuff. I just feel like it's so weird because this team hasn't officially relocated yet. We're still dealing with all this litigation. So I mean, that's where we're at right now, guys. I hope you enjoy all 3 interviews, and we'll talk to y'all at the end of the show. Joining us now on the show is our Columbus insider. He works for Columbus Dispatch, Andrew Erickson. He's been all over this Save the Crew situation and covering the team as well. Andrew, how are you doing tonight?
Doing well. Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Andrew, can you give us the latest update on the pending lawsuit between MLS, Anthony Precourt, the Columbus Crew, and the state of Ohio?
Sure. Yeah. So it's actually going. You'll have your first in-person event in this lawsuit that's been going on since March. On September 4th, there's supposed to be a hearing on the MLS and Precourt Sports Ventures motion to dismiss the lawsuit. So each side will have 45 minutes to explain their viewpoints, and try to argue their case to the judge. And then after that point, I'm not sure what the specific timeline would be, but the judge will then rule on the motion to dismiss. If the case is not dismissed, then it will continue on, likely toward the discovery process. If it is dismissed, then I'm sure there will be an appeal, almost immediately after, by Columbus and Ohio. So I think it'll be interesting, the fact that this lawsuit's been going on for a good while now, that you finally see both sides in an open courtroom.
Absolutely. And we talked to, I think it was Eric Stover, Jake, and he mentioned that, other cities could look at the Modell law as kind of like, hey, like this could be, used as maybe like a blueprint or whatnot, to like, hey, may prevent some teams from, I guess, moving. Do you see that it could potentially get as like, it could have bigger implications than just the Save the Crew side of things?
Sure. I mean, yeah, depending on what's decided, you're looking at a law that's never been tested before, and an issue that's sort of been tested, but never really in this context. So I think the landmark potential and the potential to set a precedent in this case is vast. And I think you have likely other sports leagues, other ownership groups of other teams and leagues throughout the United States and Canada, I guess you could say, looking at, what the potential implications could be of this case. And I'm sure if you're a commissioner of another league, you're probably pretty nervous or at least paying close attention as to what might happen. So I think there are parties that are more interested in this beyond Major League Soccer ownership groups and league executives. And then I think it could even expand to businesses outside of the sports industry. We're talking about the dormant commerce clause and basic parts of the U.S. Constitution and the Ohio Constitution that dictate, when businesses have the freedom to move and when they don't, and when the government can be a regulator and when it can't be. So it's fascinating in that sense, just the constitutional impacts this could potentially have, and the impacts it could have both in and outside the sports industry.
Andrew, obviously you're not a lawyer, but do you get the feeling that this?
I am not.
Do you get the feeling that this case will be drawn out? Have you spoken with anybody who's maybe giving you an opinion one way or the other, how this might play out?
I think if it's litigated to the very end, I think it could take years. I mean, these are not simple issues. You have two sides that would seem to be disagree quite heavily in how they view the interpretation of this law. And so even if it's decided one way, in December or January or whenever a trial is supposed to take place, I think you could see appeals after that. You could see different interpretations at different levels of the court system. And all that takes a significant amount of time. There's always a potential for a settlement or for a quicker decision or one side not pursuing it further. But I think if both sides stay entrenched in where they are, I mean, this thing could take years. So it's a fascinating subject in that sense. And, I think you start to look at timelines of, could a 5-year case prevent a team from moving? I don't know that that's necessarily possible, but, this thing could be in the courtroom for a significant period of time. And, long after September 4th, that's for sure.
Wow. Are you aware of like any meetings that, have taken place between the city of Columbus and PSV? I mean, I feel like all we hear about is PSV and the Austin City Council, but has there been anything between Columbus and Precourt Sports Ventures that you know of?
Not Columbus and Precourt Sports Ventures. I think those sides have been, pretty far apart. And, Precourt Sports Ventures has been very determined in their efforts to try to get a team to Austin. Columbus has been focused on their own efforts to keep a team here and to potentially purchase the current iteration of this team. I don't think there's been a ton of interaction there, but for the most part, any interaction that's taken place on the Columbus side of things has been directly with Major League Soccer. And I think if this thing progresses and it continues, that will continue to be the case.
Andrew, following the Austin City Council vote to approve a stadium to be built on the McCullough Place, Precourt mentioned he was bringing MLS to Austin in 2019. Is there a sense that he could sell the crew and leave them in Columbus while bringing in an expansion club to Austin? I know I'm getting pretty speculative here, but are we reading too much into his words there?
I mean, I think it certainly leaves that wiggle room. Whether that would happen, I think is again completely speculative. I think their plan, at least when this whole thing started, was to have a team playing in Austin in 2019 and for it to be this current iteration of the crew that moves down there with all of its infrastructure. Whether that happens, I think we'll find out, in the next couple months here. I think potentially the lawsuit could have an impact on that. But I don't think, I think to say, it's firmly one way or the other, that would be probably irresponsible on my end. But, I think at least from the very beginning, their intention has been to have a team playing there in 2019. So until further notice, I would think that's what they're shooting for. But, can't say definitively that's what it is until that type of thing is announced.
Absolutely, Andrew. And I saw on Twitter that looked like season ticket renewal emails were being sent out. Have you guys sense on how fans are reacting to that?
Well, I think there's some, there was some disappointment from the fan base in the sense that here you are sending out, and mind you, this email had been, the possibility of it had been there for about a month. The team had sent fans a heads up that, hey, this email's coming sometime around August 15th. Expect your auto renewal email to come through. So the renewal email did come through and says, if you have any updated credit card info, to put that in. If you want to change your seats, now's your time to explore that. Not necessarily the same season ticket marketing campaign that launched, last August, where you have Will Trapp and all these different players marketing season ticket packages. It's not on that same scale, but more of, keeping the fans engaged who do have season tickets. But I think there was some disappointment in the sense that comes through, and then 2 days later you have MLS 2ATX announcing its Austin FC branding, its logo, the same tree logo that a lot of fans pointed out was on the TIFO during the November playoff game. And so, it's kind of a touchy subject. And I think that the timing is certainly, was disappointing for a lot of fans in that sense.
Andrew, I want to shift gears here a little bit away from the possible relocation of the crew and actually talk about the team on the field. I'm sure you've had to talk a lot about Save the Crew recently. But the crew are right in the thick of things as it relates to the Eastern Conference playoff picture. With the recent news out of Austin, how have the players and coaching staff been handling it?
I think at this point they're almost numb to it. I had a conversation with Josh Williams after the city council vote on the term sheet came down, and he just said, it's business as usual. And even though there might be a little bit more clarity on the situation, it's not like it's completely determined. So they'll kind of keep pushing on how they have been. And he was almost taken aback when I reminded him that, it's been almost a year in this whole process that it actually has been that long. I think one benefit, and I know we talked about it for the team, was they had that dry run of the 2017 playoffs to get used to insulating themselves. If they want it to be a rallying issue, they can certainly make it that. But they've been, for the most part, been able to keep it from becoming a distraction Whether that can continue for the length of the season, certainly, as these decisions and as these conversations become more real as far as the future of the team, I don't know, but the team certainly has done a good job of compartmentalizing things to this point. And, like I said, it's already been almost 11 months in this process. So they've certainly become experts in that respect.
No, absolutely, Andrew. I mean, it's been a while. I was actually looking at the standings actually before the show, and I was talking to Jake, and it seems like the Union are slowly creeping up on the Crew actually right now in terms of points. I think they're 4 points behind, but they have one game in hand. The Crew have had an interesting, run of games. They played that game against Chicago, which only 8,000 reported in attendance, and it looked a lot less.
They were a lot less than that.
Yeah,
not all of them less. Showed up. I can say that. Yeah.
The good old FC Dallas sellout. That's what we call it down here in Texas. But then the Atlanta United game, which the Crew seemed like played really well until just a couple of bad moments here or there. What do you make? What do you make of how the team's been playing recently?
Yeah, I think they've had a tough stretch. When you looked at that stretch they had over the summer, where they were at LA Galaxy, at LAFC. Had a couple difficult home games, one against Atlanta United. I think they had a really tough stretch. They were, I think, 4 shutouts in 5 games and had just 1 win. So they were really struggling for a second there. And then they had the stretch of 3 games where they won 3 in a row by 1 goal, including a road win at the Red Bulls. They had that Will Trapp bomb from 30 yards that helped them beat Orlando City. And they had that late Jossie Zardes goal that helped them win in stoppage time over Houston. So it's a team that's been able to grind out games. They're already tied for second in Major League Soccer history in terms of stoppage time winners with 3. So I think the only team ahead of them was that 2012 San Jose Earthquakes team that had 5. So it's a team that knows how to grind out results. I don't think they're going to overpower any team like Atlanta or an NYC or any other team like that on a given night. But I think they've shown they can compete with just about anyone. Whether they can do it on a consistent basis and whether they can get themselves into a comfortable 4th place position, I don't know. Like you said, the Union seem to be gathering momentum and starting to creep up on them a little bit. I don't think there's any danger at this point of the Crew missing the playoffs. They still, I think, have a 7-point lead on the Montreal Impact and have a game in hand over them. And Montreal has 7 games to play. So, I think if you look at the 538 rankings, they have the Crew at a 98% chance of making the playoffs. But it'll be interesting to see if they get that one game at Mapfre Stadium and the one-off knockout round. That'll be very important for them, obviously. But they've shown that, they have the resolve and the nerve to be able to win a game on the road. They did it last year in Atlanta. So it's a team that's certainly capable of doing that. Obviously, they can do themselves some favors by getting that home game for the knockout round.
Andrew, we've seen Zach Steffen he's been linked to clubs in Europe. Could we see him make a move across the pond before the start of next season?
I think it's certainly plausible. And I think you look at a couple things. First of all, there's just the general uncertainty of the team. You look at, where the team is going to be playing next year. That's still to be determined. You look at, the future of the coach that brought Zach Steffen back to the United States and Greg Berhalter. There's been a lot of speculation of could he be linked to the United States national team job. So there's some uncertainty there. And I think you also look at the guy's career trajectory. I mean, this is a guy that at 23 years old is already one of the best keepers in MLS and has a bright national team future ahead of him. And I think wants to be challenged. So obviously the English work permit thing would be challenging for him. I think he'd have to get a few more caps over the next couple of years to make that more of a certainty. Certainly it's still a possibility for him to get that on appeal. But I think he does have aspirations of playing in Europe, and I think of doing so sooner rather than later. So I certainly see that as a possibility. I wouldn't say certainty, but if you think of guys on the Crew that fits their career trajectory, I would certainly say that's the case with Zach Steffen.
Absolutely, Andrew. And on the topic of Greg Berhalter, you mentioned it. He's a candidate for the U.S. men's national team position, and I feel like there's been a couple of hints here or there that have kind of pointed to an MLS coach being named the national team coach. In your eyes, why Berhalter? Why do you think USSF has kind of locked in on maybe a Berhalter and a Vermees as, their top picks to be the national team coach.
Well, yeah, and I think, I defer to what Greg Berhalter said on this, and that, if there are conversations to be had on that, there are conversations to be had later and not, right this very moment with the season going on. But, I think he's respected throughout the league as a tactical mind and somebody who can get the most out of certain positions. And I think the question a lot of people have raised is, with a full slate of talented pool players, what could he do with that? And obviously the Crew has had one of the lower budgets in the league and hasn't spent like a lot of other clubs in Major League Soccer, but the Crew has still been fairly competitive over the last 5 years. So I think you look at that track record, you look at, his ability to manipulate tactics and see him as a potential candidate there.
Andrew, thank you so much for your time today. Please tell our listeners where we can find your work and where we can find you on Twitter and any other social media platform you want to plug away.
Sure. Yeah. You can follow me on Twitter at @AEricksonCD. You can find all of our coverage on dispatch.com/crewsc. And, you can keep up with our coverage on the Dispatch Crew Facebook page. And that's, now over 1,200 members. So, follow along with all of our coverage that way. And, still a lot more to cover left in the season.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time tonight, Andrew.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Joining us now on the show is the leader of #SaveTheCrew, Morgan Hughes. Morgan, how are you doing today, man?
I'm good. It's a beautiful night here in Columbus. I'm on my back porch, back deck, so I apologize if the cicadas are ruining the audio, but it's like cicada season right now, so you'll be hearing the screaming bugs that those of us in Columbus have been trying to sleep through for the last couple months. So welcome to Ohio.
Absolutely, Morgan. And this whole, last couple of weeks and months, it's been a really, busy time for y'all, no?
Yeah. Life has been really, really busy since October 16th of last year. And, I think that none of us even notice it anymore. The blistering pace at which life goes. But, here we are, and it's still happening.
Morgan, can you give us your thoughts on the Austin City Council vote that went down 2 weeks, essentially approving Anthony Precourt, I don't know if right's the right word, to build at the McCullough Place to build a new stadium?
Yeah, it was, I think that, the overwhelming opinion from Save the Crew in general has been, what happens in Austin doesn't affect us. The future of the Crew is not going to be decided in Austin, Texas, and the future of the Crew is not in Austin, Texas in general. It's here in Columbus, and whenever MLS pulls their head out of their ass and sells the Crew to local ownership, there we go. That's the future of the Crew. So, all that to say, we were still, I think all of us were kind of paying attention because we're so heavily involved in this situation. It was, I don't know, there were a lot of things going through my head. I was excited, frankly, that Anthony Precourt is gone, there's no coming back from that. So it was kind of a celebratory day in that Anthony Precourt is now someone else's problem. But on the opposite side of the spectrum, I feel for the people of Austin who now have to kind of have this man baby as a member of their business community in some absentee fashion. So, I feel for the people of Austin. I'm excited for the people of Columbus and all emotions in between.
Right, and you talked about in a piece by Andrew King of The Athletic. You talked about how regardless of what happens, the quote from the article, there's going to be appeals. The thing is going to litigate for years and years and years. The question is, how long is MLS going to let this play out? How long is Don Garber going to let this dumpster fire burn? And you don't really make it sound all, like gloomy for the Crew in Columbus. Based off that last vote, how confident are you that, the Crew are going to be playing soccer in 2019 in Columbus and beyond?
So that question is asked of me so often, and it is the right question to ask. I'm not saying it isn't. But I'm saying that I'm asked that so often, and my answer is always the same thing, and it makes it seem like it's a canned response, and it's not legitimate, and it's not authentic. But it just so happens to be true that I've never been more confident about the Crew being saved than I am at this moment. Everything that I know and everything that I hear and all the information that we have points towards the Columbus Crew being sold to local ownership and Anthony Freecourt. I don't even care, frankly, what he does, but all signs point to the Crew being saved. It's just crossing the T's and dotting the lowercase J's and getting it signed over. And I can't wait for it to be over, frankly. I think that myself and all the other leaders of Save the Crew and all of the fans of the Crew and, basically just everyone in Columbus needs to sleep. We need to rest, and it's, the playoffs are looming, and it's time to just start focusing on soccer again. And I can't wait for that to happen. So yeah, I'm confident as hell that the Crew will be here in 2019 and 2049 and 2099 and all the nines after that.
Morgan, Save the Crew recently released renderings of a new stadium, or I guess maybe it was even a renovated mat-free stadium.
It's beautiful, by the way. I thought it was pretty cool. I don't know about you, Jake.
Yeah. It was awesome.
Yeah, definitely an upgrade over mat-free stadium for sure. Obviously, PSV is looking for a new stadium in Austin, but beyond that, what was the motivation behind coming up with those renderings and the new renovation for mat-free stadium?
Well, I think that if I'm understanding the question correctly, it's why do that? And again, I think it's a valid question, but I think that it's answered simply in that Save the Crew is just a thing that humans put together, and humans always are looking to do what's next and what's like. I don't know, why do we go to the moon? Like, why do we keep building taller buildings? We do it because it's what's next. We are not rigid, things. We are moving objects, and Save the Crew is a bunch of people who are like progressive, forward-thinking individuals, and we kind of were sitting there and we're like, they talk about this downtown stadium in Columbus. They talk of their parallel paths, but we've only seen stadium renderings for Austin. What if we try to render a stadium? Obviously none of us had ever done that before. But here we are as human beings. We do cool things because it's the next thing to do. And that's why we did it. And I think it turned out really well.
And just out of curiosity, Morgan, I didn't see a projected cost on that. Was it just like a picture renderation and stuff like that? Or did you guys, or is that like kind of like the next step of like, okay, like if this happens, like we'd like this, and then we could determine the cost from there?
Yeah, I mean, like if we're going to be the ones that end up financing it, and spoiler alert, we will not be the ones that finance it. Mm-hmm. We do not have that kind of scrap. Then we would talk about costs. But what we do is we kind of, we want to. I don't think that we have the answer on how to save the Crew. I don't think that Save the Crew ever did. And I think that was probably our biggest, thing in the beginning. Like, we had this groundswell of support and everyone was like, okay, let's do it. How do we save the Crew? And we're like, oh, crap, we don't know. So what we've done, instead of telling people this is how you do it, now everyone press that button and let's be done with it. We said, let's imagine a future together and let's define it and let's make it as a construct, like as neat and inclusive and badass and forward-thinking as possible. And that stadium rendering was just a manifestation of that, of us saying, here's what the future could look like if you invest in humans, in communities, instead of man babies with trust funds. Invest in the humans that made it possible for your league to be here, and the future is bright and the sky is the limit. So that's what the stadium renderings were. And that's, like, if you ask me how much it costs, I'm like, my brain doesn't think on that level. Like 150 million, a billion, 700 billion. I don't know. I'm unfamiliar with that level of cash. So
Morgan,
that's my answer.
Morgan, can you talk about the support Save the Crew has received from other MLS fan bases outside of Columbus?
Man, yes, I can. I think I'll do a terrible job of it because it's been so crazy and so massive and so worldwide. Just yesterday I saw this video I retweeted on Twitter of this A-League game in Australia where, some supporter section had this gigantic crowd banner that said Save the Crew, and it had like a picture of Higuain, like Marum, I think, on it or something. It was just like mind-blowing. So yeah, I can talk about it, but I think that it's just going to be another one of those things that we won't really understand the scope of until, the book is written or the 30 for 30 comes out, 20 years from now. But it's been absolutely heart-stoppingly, emotionally overwhelming and really like important and cool and emotional, man. Like you kind of live your life and you think, if I can be a part of something, if I could stand up for someone, if I could resonate, wouldn't that be neat? It's like why people name their kids after them, because they just want to kind of like, they want some echo. They want to resonate. They want to continue. And to kind of watch that happen for our community in a moment where we were kind of being thrown aside and cast away, to see our community resonate, it's special and really, really overwhelmingly emotional. And I'm so honored to have been a part of it.
How much outreach have you guys received from fans of AFC Wimbledon over in England? Obviously, their club MK Dons was taken for them. I don't even know how many years ago that was, 20, 30 years ago. How I know they put up like a program. I saw. I think it must have been sometime last season or maybe even after that. Have you guys had any conversations with any of their supporters groups about the relocation of a club?
Yeah, they've reached out, and by they, like, who do I mean? I have no idea. So many people over there have reached out and have, at the very least lent their voice and their, and their hearts to us and said, we know what you're going through. And yeah, like you mentioned, they had a thing in their program. It's kind of I don't really pay attention really a lot to soccer outside of MLS. I'm like a Columbus guy, and
Mm-hmm.
the Crew are a sports team here, and that's how I got into it. So like, I'm not like a fan of any London team or German team. So I'm really kind of unfamiliar with that, but I know that anytime I talk to somebody over there or I'm interviewed by, an outlet over there, like the BBC or what have you, they will mention it, and I will have to say the same thing again. Like, yes, it's something that they've reached out, all of their fans and, even their organization, but I'm not really sure what to say about it other than like, I hope that we're able to prevent the thing that happened to them.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's and the crazy thing is, with the open pyramid, you have, I think, Wimbledon and MK Dons in the same division now in England, which is kind of just like a massive middle finger to the other side. But Morgan, we were talking about this a little bit off the mic. What do you think of that new Austin FC logo that was just released a week ago, or even less than a week ago?
Well, my first thoughts were honestly, how dare you with PSV, and when I talk about our community, I don't just mean the fans of the Crew. I don't just mean the residents of Columbus. I don't just mean the residents that are fans. There are also real human beings in the front office of the Columbus Crew that have real families and real bills and real mortgage payments and real kids, and they have to pay for real braces and put real foods on real tables. And Anthony Precourt hasn't addressed them, and it's been over 10 months. And so you see this man baby down in Austin, high-fiving AstroTurf participants and throwing on these crappy made-in-China scarves and releasing this just very bland meh logo. And I'm angry for the front office here in Columbus. I'm angry for the people that have all of those real considerations and careers that I just mentioned. So that was the first thing I thought. How dare you, man baby? Do you have a soul? Like, what are you doing with your existence? My second thought was, meh. I mean, it's not bad. Certainly not good. It's just, but how do you I also feel for the designers who came up with it, come up with an authentically ambitious logo for a team that doesn't exist, for a soccer organization that has no history other than a destructive one, and make it good. And you can't do it. I mean, it's a no-win scenario. So, they kind of copied one of our tifos, and I mean, that's the easy way out. It just seemed to me like Precourt probably hired somebody for not enough money and didn't give him enough time, because that's what he does. He doesn't put the effort in that's necessary, and he's an idiot. Final answer.
Morgan, a couple more questions here for you before we let you go. American sports have felt and dealt with relocation quite a bit. I mean, you have the Seattle Supersonics relocating to Oklahoma City, the San Diego Chargers relocating to LA, and now the Oakland Raiders in the NFL also relocating to Las Vegas here. And I don't know if it's next year or the year after that. Although there's been uproar, people seem to forget and move on. Do you think MLS fans will do the same?
Well, no, I don't. I think that we're proving that we don't. First of all, there are exercises in comparisons, right? And then there are fallacies. And I think where what we forget is that comparing, the attempted theft of the Columbus Crew to the Jazz moving to Utah in 1975 is a false equivalency. These are not two scenarios that can be. They have one thing in common and 99,000 things not in common. So yes, has it happened before? Have sports teams moved? Absolutely. I don't see how that's relevant, other than maybe we're sick and tired of bullshit and we're not taking it anymore. And Anthony Precourt was the last guy that tried to get away with it. I think that everyone's sick of it. It's been almost a year now, and you still see these displays at every MLS game, and you see Save the Crew as an organization getting stronger and more powerful, and their voices, becoming more aligned. And I think that the mental image I have is that there's a country club somewhere that Anthony Precourt kind of is a legacy at, right? He never even joined it. His daddy probably just belonged to it. And, he walks in and there are people there that belong there, and, they probably actually earned their money. It wasn't just gifted to them. And they probably watched this guy walk in and they're like, you idiot, all you had to do was not screw this up. But you screwed it up for all of these rich elites that try to steal money and steal, pieces of communities for profit, and you screwed it up. How dare you? So I think that is the future. I think that is the unavoidable conclusion to the Save the Crew struggle. Is as soon as the Crew is sold, the next day is a new era. This can't happen anymore. We're writing the playbook and we're writing the blueprints on how to push back against people that try to destroy communities because they like melted cheese. Get out of our face, you idiot man baby. You can't do this, and your people can't do this to us anymore.
Absolutely, Morgan. And my final question, or actually our final question. I'm sure you've been asked this, but if MLS decided and said, "Hey, look, we want Precourt to go to Austin, but we will give Columbus an expansion spot within, I guess 5 years with new local ownership," would you guys take that, or would you guys accept that as a solution, or that's completely out the window? You just want to save the crew?
Yeah, the last part. I mean, yeah, the latter. I think that's a valid, legitimate question, and it's something that we've been asked, all of us involved in Save the Crew since day one. But I have to, and I know this is going to sound like a canned response, and I think that you guys can tell that I'm not a canned response guy, but it's just going to come out like it. I can't operate in a world of hypothetical scenarios because it would take away from what is actually happening. What if like all of the parallel universes, like something happens and a black hole collapses and the San Jose earthquakes don't exist anymore, and then the Houston Dynamo are back, and like you can think about that and talk about that. It would just be a waste of energy, man. We love the Columbus Crew, and it's not just a team. It's not just like a designation. It's a community, and they're members of that community that are on the team, and that are people who gave birth to people on the team, and people that have connections to relatives that have passed away through this thing, and when they go there, they spiritually feel like they're with them again. And this is not an expansion slot to us. I know that it is to others, people maybe on the other side of this argument. To us, it's a real thing that exists, and we're real human beings, and we're not trying to save an expansion slot. We're trying to save our crew. So, like, expansion slot, yes or no? I can't even right now. Save the crew, final answer.
Morgan, thank you so much for your time today. Please tell our listeners where we can follow you on Twitter and where we can find anything Save the Crew related.
Sure. I'm on Twitter at Morgan_Hughes. Save the Crew is on Twitter at save_the_crew, which tells you probably who registered that account. SaveTheCrew.com is really the central hub of the resistance. Whatever you need and whatever question you may have about our movement, how you can get involved, how you can help, please go there. We've been building it ever since day one of this movement, and all of the answers are there. Go take our 2019 season ticket pledge if you're in Columbus or you're in Ohio or you travel to games. We're taking pledges for season tickets whenever the Crew is sold. And just remember that, man, this is not over. Keep telling everyone you know. We're going to save the Crew.
All righty. Thank you so much, Morgan.
Thanks, guys.
Joining us on the show today is the president and founder of MLS in Austin. It's Josh Babetski. Josh, how you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Not a problem. I just kind of wanted to start the interview off by asking a little bit about your background in your on the MLSinaustin.org website. It mentions that you've been a consultant for soccer ownerships and interests. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more and kind of explain to our listeners what that exactly means?
Yeah, when I moved to Austin in 2013 from New York City, I immediately started getting involved in the local soccer community. There was a supporters group then at the time for the Austin Aztecs, and I quickly got to know some of the owners, And then just over a period of time, just got involved with trying to help the then Aztec club try and get more, more prominence, better fan engagement. They were trying to really kind of grow out a secondary supporters group, and they were looking to kind of just broaden their community engagement. And this is, of course, before they got washed away in 2015. So, basically during that time, we kind of applied, my technology by trade is in the tech sector, but basically applying a lot of that startup and online community engagement and trying to apply that to growing soccer supporter and culture. And then in parallel to that, I was in a city where I thought had really good potential for an MLS club, which then led to starting the MLS in Austin project.
Josh, when the Aztecs fell apart, I mean, what was your thought? What was your thoughts when they eventually fell apart? Was it like, oh, is there not an interest here, or what was just general thoughts on when they fell apart, I guess?
No, I mean, at the time in 2015, it was largely just situational. So earlier in the season, their home field had kind of got literally washed away. There was a flood near the field where they had played, and it was a turf field, and it rippled and washed up the turf, making the facility unusable for the balance of the season. And this caused them to kind of go into a mad scramble to play in another location, which was very north of the city, up in Round Rock, which is kind of northeast of Austin. If you kind of look at downtown Austin as a clock, it's kind of like way up at one o'clock. And one, so your demographics, your attendees shift. Two, that facility was also a school-owned facility, so there was a lot of restrictions on concession revenue. They couldn't sell alcohol on the premises. It was surrounded by a sea of parking lots because it's part of just a larger sports complex. And it's a pretty far commute, even if you live in Austin proper, to get up there versus that other facility, which was much more downtown. So at the time, it was just like, it really was a string of bad luck of trying to kind of get a facility up and running. It wasn't until really when they announced they weren't coming back for the 2016 season, which it was more of like, oh, well, this is not ideal.
Josh, I wanted to kind of switch gears really to our interview last week with Chris Bills of the Austin American-Statesman. We'd asked him a question just kind of about who you were, and he mentioned that in his article that you had a 5-year plan to bring MLS to Austin. Can you talk about your plan?
Well, it was more than a 5-year plan. We're in year 5 of that plan, and it's just kind of worked out. So it didn't really start out with a 5-year vision. It just started out with, originally we were kind of shooting for, around 2020, 2022 to attract an expansion team. The premise of MLS in Austin, when it started in December of 2013, had 3 main mission goals. One, attract an ownership group to Austin, Texas. 2, attract the attention of the league. And 3, create awareness with the local government agencies and city resources that would be needed to bring a team to town. Austin is a very big soccer town. It's just hard to see it from afar because there was kind of no center of gravity to coalesce all the various support for all the various teams around town.
Absolutely, Josh. There was, I know, I feel like you probably been asked this a lot. There was you made that post in February of 2017, I guess kind of speculating that the Crew could be a team that could relocate to Austin. What prompted you to create that post? 'Cause I know there's been a lot of people like, whoa, why is he making this thing? And then, 8 months later, it's actually coming to fruition.
Yeah, the Pelican, the Columbus Crew Pelican brief. I've heard somebody mention it. In the process of trying to attract an expansion team, around the end of 2016, a number of things were happening. One, the league announced they wanted a more kind of structured expansion process around the then 4 remaining slots, because earlier that year, Don Garber had announced he was probably only taking the league up to 28 clubs under his tenure. Two was the Barrett Sports Group started doing surveys here in Austin, Texas, around I think January 2016, January 2017. And three, of all the cities that were submitting bids, Austin was not one of them, yet Austin continued to be name dropped by the league in a number of different outlets, all of which can be sourced. And the article does kind of, highlight some of those things. So as somebody who's had spent a lot of time trying to understand how the league works, the mechanics of single entity ownership, just trying to kind of figure out the best mechanics and system to attract a club. And that ranged everything from trying to talk to people within the league, talking to reporters, both locally and, wherever it can find, and consuming a lot of information about how the league itself worked. It dawned on me, it was a simple math equation at the end of the day. League keeps talking about Austin. Austin doesn't have ownership group. League says expansion teams are only coming from applicant pool for expansion clubs. Ergo, there's only one other way to bring a club to Austin. And it really was that simple. And then the second part of that is like, okay, well then who? Who would be a logical club? And then you start looking at the data, and Columbus just leaps off the page as being the most likely club for relocation. So, and I kind of spell out kind of some of that logic there. And that's kind of the outline of the thesis.
Josh, so much has been made about the Austin clause that was built into the sale of the Crew when Anthony Precourt bought the club back in 2013. Now, you mentioned, obviously, in your last answer that you had connected the Crew to Austin just based off of just doing some research within MLS and how the mechanics work. Did you have any prior knowledge to the Austin clause before the announcement that the Crew were looking into potential relocation?
No, I mean, and even up until I guess Dungarmer semi-confirmed its existence, earlier this year. I just thought it was just hearsay and rumor as well. It seemed very weird that there would be a purchase agreement for a club in 2013, but only had one specific city listed as a potential place you could relocate it to. It kind of seemed a little far afield. Now, the only other really data was that the Columbus Crew were the Aztecs affiliate, or the Aztecs were the Columbus Crew's affiliate in their 2015 season. And there had been a lot of rumor scuttlebutt about interest. And at one point when the Aztecs said they weren't coming back, it was speculated that PSV might actually invest in the USL club to help bring it back. So that really just kind of seeded more data that Columbus had an awareness of Austin, but it wasn't any kind of smoking gun.
Absolutely, and we speak of PSV and the main guy Anthony Precourt. What is your relationship like with Mr. Precourt?
I think handshake and a rope line. I've like many supporters in Austin, I've been in the room with him maybe a couple of times since this whole thing started. He seems nice, affable. He seems really passionate about coming to Austin. But I haven't gone out and had wings or queso or anything.
Josh, let's move away from the Anthony Precourt talk here, and I want to talk about the city of Austin. What makes the city a fit for MLS?
It is just a great soccer market. It is a great growth market. We're fourth in TV ratings for the previous World Cup. The previous 2 years in EPL, we were both sixth and third in NBC sports ratings. We're typically a top 10, top 12 TV rating market for a lot of the big U.S. men's and women's national matches. Large soccer community. And then on the flip side of that, Austin itself is the fastest growing market. You can pick any top 10 list in almost any category, and Austin is on it or near the top of it. Housing, jobs, growth, construction, housing, technology. We're on the short list for Amazon's second headquarters. Both Google and Facebook have very large presences here. Apple's second U.S. headquarters is based here in Austin. So Austin contains the demographics, the growth, the culture, the trends that are highly valuable. MLS isn't moving here because of where Austin is today. Our metro area is about 2 million people now, and by 2030, it'll be 3 million people. They're seeing where the growth curve is and getting in early.
Absolutely, Josh. And when you talk about those EPL numbers, I mean, it shows us an interest in soccer. But I mean, I think me and Jake can both say, I think you do too, Josh, that we know people that are interested in the Premier League, but seem not to make that like transition and enjoy MLS. I mean, what makes you think that that MLS in Austin could potentially capture those people as well?
I mean, it's just the engagement we see when we do events. So, we've gone out and kind of hung out at the various watch parties for EPL clubs, and there's large interest. So, we have a really large Tottenham Hotspur, and the local chapter guys here is like, yeah, we're down for like 50 plus, season tickets once this club gets here. I think it's also largely a demographic thing. You're kind of older. Your older sports fans tend, and not making a broad generalization, but as a characterization, your older kind of diehard EPL guys tend to still fall a little bit more into the Euro snob category. But even they see the potential of, if we have an MLS team here in a 20,000 seat stadium, all of those clubs love to come to the U.S. and they're certainly going to want to come to Austin, being such a big EPL market. So even if they could care less about MLS, they know that it creates the opportunity for their club to come here over the summer. And then with the younger demographics, they are much more open. They grew up with MLS. The league's, 20 some years old. They've grown up in a country that has had a stable soccer league. So they are much more on board with, being an EPL fan because, their parents were, or they got attracted to it, but also wanting to have a local club to support. And we've seen no real huge divisiveness or rift where we're, seeing EPL fans that are just like, nope, I only like my EPL club and I could care less about MLS. Additionally, we have a large Hispanic population. So the Liga MX team fans, we have them as well that are just looking to also have a hometown team to engage with.
And Josh, I mean, we just saw the logo come out. What were your thoughts on that?
It's certainly different, but I think that's good. Austin is a pretty diverse place, so there's a lot of different kinds of communities. There's a wide variety of demographics and interests. I think it would be near impossible to kind of have a highly, highly targeted mascot-y type team name or something that was, too specifically culturally appropriated, and get wide consensus on it. I think where you get with kind of going with the oak branding creates a lot of flexibility. We've already kind of nicknamed the club El Tree, and that's starting to stick. But I think it tells a good story. PSV hired a local design firm called the Butler Brothers. They've done a lot of local big brandings, restaurants, museums, things like that. And these guys have a very specific methodology about how they approach branding work. And I think it tells in the final result. I don't think it's a logo where you look at it and you kind of go, wow, this blew me away right away. It is really, I think, a more thoughtful, intellectual logo that, takes a little bit of time to really see the nuance in what they've built, but also I think the flexibility. And the biggest cachet of that branding is having Austin very prominent. Nobody is more sick of seeing another city FC club get rolled out than I am. That was not on my wish list of club names, but I get it. Austin is really the brand. Austin is the reason PSV wants to be here. Austin is an international city. You can go anywhere in this country except maybe Columbus, Ohio. Tell people you're from Austin, Texas, and they're like, oh, I love that town, or I had a great time there, or I went there for ACL or South by Southwest or F1. You can put Austin on a shirt almost anywhere on this planet. And people will be like, wow, that's a cool place. I want to go there, or I've been there.
Josh, has Austin and its supporters been treated unfairly by the fans?
No. I mean, generally, we've seen a mixed response. I mean, clearly, this is not the ideal way we would have gone about securing a team for Austin. So, I mean, even us here in Austin are like, well, we wish it would have played out a little bit differently. But generally, other supporters groups we've talked to are pretty excited about, coming to Austin. While there's been, a couple yellow scars and things like that up at various games, by and large, the formal supporters groups of the league, haven't been overtly on one side of this issue or the next. And I think individuals within those groups are certainly going to have polarizing opinions, and I certainly respect that. But overall, I don't think we've seen any more significant hostility than, we've seen coming out of Columbus, and as far as like social or online, and people that have gone places. I mean, we've had people just this weekend in Austin FC shirts. There's somebody at the Red Bulls game right now. Somebody went down to the Houston match, and most people are like, "Hey, cool! Can't wait to come to Austin next year."
And we talked about Austin next year. I mean, we see the MLS team as potentially coming up. There's also the Austin Bowl, which kind of been a little bit forgotten about, even with their interesting name. I mean, how will that USL team add to the dynamic of the MLS team coming to now you go from having no soccer teams in Austin to basically two, right?
Yeah, it's been the running joke. We've gone from a soccer desert to a riches of soccer just everywhere. I think it's good if you're a soccer fan in Austin, because I think the USL club is going to be under a lot of pressure to get out of the shadow of having an MLS club, especially since they're located way out past our airport on the eastern side of the city, out past the airport, in a town called Elroy, Texas. So that really should tell you all you need to know about what's surrounding the racetrack out there. So they're going to be under a lot of pressure to attract people to come out there. But the bar isn't very high. The expectations aren't very high. And they already own the racetrack. They already own the bleachers. They're reusing the same concession stands, bathrooms, everything that they use for other events they host out there. If you're not familiar with COTA, Circuit of the Americas, it's not only an F1 track, but also on the infield, they also have a small outdoor concert venue. I think it holds like 14,000 people, and it's like sit on the lawn or whatever. But the soccer pitch is right behind there. And we already have an FC Barcelona academy. So most of what's needed is already out there, which means the infrastructure cost isn't very high. If they get 1,500 to 2,000 people out there a match, I think they're doing pretty well. They don't need the USL club to be successful overall. They just need to continue to socialize that going out to COTA for an entertainment venue is a thing. However, the MLS club is going to be under a microscope for the next few years, as are the supporters groups. If every game isn't a sellout, if the marketing plan and ticket sales aren't well orchestrated and executed, there's going to be a lot of critics just waiting to pounce on it. So I think if you're a soccer fan, that's great, because now you have two organizations that are really under the gun to put a quality product in front of the fans and attract them to come out there.
Josh, thank you so much for your time today. Please tell our listeners where we can find you on Twitter and any other thing you may want to plug away.
Yeah, if you're interested in keeping tabs on the ongoing adventures of supporters in Austin, Texas for our new MLS club, Austin FC, you can check us out at mlsinaustin.org. And you can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and all your other favorite social networks.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time tonight, Josh.
Hey, thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much to Andrew Erickson of the Columbus Dispatch, Morgan Hughes of Save the Crew, and Josh Babetski of MLS in Austin. A lot of interesting and thoughtful insight provided by those three here on this week's episode. Arman, we've talked about Save the Crew. We've talked about MLS to Austin. What's your biggest takeaway from tonight's, or I guess this week's discussion with these three?
It's tough because you never want to see a team relocated. I think that's one thing that it's become the norm in U.S. Sports, and I don't think it's a good thing. I mean, I think we can all agree with anyone on that. The relocation is not really the greatest thing in the world, but like I said, I feel like I said this a couple months ago. I feel like the more I hear about it, the more likely it seems to happen. I know it might sound terrible to Crew fans, but it's kind of tough. I mean, from our view, I mean, all we hear is Austin advancing, Austin advancing, Austin advancing. We don't really hear anything that says, all right, the Crew have a massive win. I mean, that lawsuit, the Modell law, is going to be the ultimate decider. I mean, but outside of that, it seems like it's coming. We saw a logo come out. Like, come on. It has trees. Like, come on. L tree. I mean, what? It's interesting. I mean, what are your takeaways, Jake?
My biggest takeaway from tonight, and it was actually highlighted by Alexi Lawless in his halftime speech, if you will, during the DC United Red Bull game. Listening to Morgan Hughes and listening to Josh Babetski, you have two sides that believe very confidently that, you have Save the Crew, who believes they're going to keep the club, and you have Babetski, who ultimately believes that there's going to be MLS soccer in 2019 in Austin. And to me, I think MLS is doing a poor job. I agree with Alexi Lawless here. I think they're doing a poor job at selling hope to Crew fans that there's going to be a team there. I think it's unfair too that there's a season ticket drive going on right now for the Crew. To me, it just, like you said, rip the Band-Aid off. Say it's going to be one way or the other. Don't lead people on. It's unfair to both fan bases. What's going to happen to that club come 2019? So, but with that, that's it for this week's show. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at UncSamSoccerPod. Follow Arman Kafai at Arman Kafai. Follow Steven Jodaran. He is in Cuba right now, soaking up the sun. So make sure you give him a follow at Steven Jodaran, and follow myself at Jake Watroba. For Arman, I'm Jake. We'll talk to you guys next week.